We're excited to kick this off. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian from the Food Institute.
Great. Well, thanks, Brooke. Thank you to the Glanbia Nutritionals team, and also thank you to James as well, who is my co-presenter on this. A little bit about me. I am the managing partner and CEO of the Food Institute. My background is quite a varied one. I started, in investment banking, working for Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, covering the consumer food and beverage group. I spent time as a consultant, helped building the transaction advisory group at Ernst & Young here in New York. I also worked as a private equity executive, being responsible for mergers and acquisitions and acquiring controlling positions in the lower middle market food and beverage companies in the U.S. I also sit on the board of the Rutgers Food Innovation Center. I serve as an advisor to multiple food and beverage companies and appear regularly on various media programs in the U.S. And a little bit about the Food Institute. Long story short, it is the Bloomberg of the food and beverage industry from a news, data, and trends perspective. It specifically focuses on B2B content. The content is insights-driven. Not politically driven or ideologically driven, but really focused on what is happening in the food and beverage industry from a statistics and analytical perspective. Welcome all members to check out our website, foodinstitute.com. And if there's interest in becoming a member, please sign up. So there are going to be a number of polls today. For the first poll, I want to give an opportunity for all the audience members to answer this poll. What is the average life expectancy for the U.S.? We have 4 different options, so I'll leave about 30 seconds for the audience members to choose A, B, C, or D, 72, 77, 80, and 83. So please, if you haven't hit your answer, please do so in the next 20 seconds, and I will show the results in a little bit. But as people are submitting their answers, health is a key issue for the United States as a whole. And you would think that the U.S. being the #1 nation, both from like a GDP perspective, just from a growth perspective over the past 50 years, you would expect there would be a high correlation with life expectancy. I'm sure as I go to the next slide in the next 10 seconds, you'll find out the answer. And with that, I'll leave 5 more seconds. We have 52% of the attendees that have answered. So the answer is correct. 54% of the attendees chose the right answer, 77. So it's a quite very good. We have a very well-informed audience today. So nice job on that. So just taking a look at the past 40 years. So the darkened line is the life expectancy for the U.S. The current average across the OECD nations is about a little over 80. The U.S. is below average at 77, as the poll answer indicated. And what you'll notice is that, the U.S. has really fallen behind, not just recently, but even going back into the 1980s, being in the lower part of that cluster of countries. You'll notice that as the years progress, the U.S. has really kind of fallen behind life expectancy. And this is quite shocking, and it's something that, we've all heard about, we've read about it, but to see it in this graphical form really highlights the major issue that the U.S. has as it relates to, their physical and also, as we'll touch upon in later slides, mental wellness. Interestingly, there's the one at the bottom that started around around here. This is actually Korea. So I'm Korean by background, and it's just interesting to see just the dynamic between these two countries over the past 40 years. Another way to look at health and wellness in the U.S. Is avoidable deaths. And so Similar to the previous slide, what we're seeing is that the U.S. Continues to experience higher avoidable deaths versus the other OECD nations, right? The OECD average is 225 per 100,000 population. The U.S. Stands at 336. And what you've also can notice here is that it's actually increased, over the past 5 years since 2015. Some other metrics that I wanted to highlight here, and this is not exhaustive, so I just want to give a lay of the land. And clearly, when you look at obesity, chronic illness, pandemic deaths, and even intentional self-harm, you'll notice that the U.S. either is the lead in these metrics or near the top. So one thing I'll want to touch upon here is obesity. This is indicated by a body mass index of 30 or more, right? When you look at what is considered the normal range, it's about 18.5 to about 24. What's considered overweight is about 25 to 29. And obese, which is the higher category, is 30 and above. And U.S. currently stands at 40, on average 42.8, which is quite staggering. Chronic illness is defined as having multiple different types of conditions, at the same time, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, and then pandemic deaths is pretty much self-explanatory. But even with pandemic deaths, you can sort of make the correlation that because of the health condition of U.S. and Americans, the deaths are at the higher end of the range when you compare it to other OECD nations. I just added the intentional self-harm to show that mental illness is becoming more and more of an issue, and in this particular case, it's about suicide, right? So, long story short, when we take a look at these graphs, U.S. is in a pretty bad shape when it comes to the statistics related around health and wellness. I also wanted to highlight how Americans self-report their conditions. So this is a recent survey that was done by Data Essential, and what's really interesting is that anxiety and depression tops the list of conditions that Americans self-report or have reported over the past 5 years. The others, overweight, hypertension, high cholesterol. So these are nothing new, but you could see that the self-reported conditions highly correlate with some of the earlier graphs of whether it's obesity, whether it's chronic illnesses. Americans do suffer. This is a key issue and condition of many Americans now. What's also interesting is that, in a recent survey, this is done back in the end of 2022, the question was asked, when thinking about your health in 2023, which of the following options, if any, are most important to you? And when you look at what Americans listed, quite surprisingly, drinking water was the top. I would not have expected that to be the top. But you'll also see that exercise, reducing stress, so getting more sleep, more of the emotional, that mental wellness is near the top of the list. Obviously losing weight, that remains consistent from year to year. But you'll also find that consumers are looking to eat more protein, and that's something that James will be talking about later in his presentation. The desire for functional products, getting more vitamins. So these are all opportunities, and I think especially for those that are food and beverage manufacturers here, one conclusion that I take away from this is that health and wellness is not only here to stay, but it's also increasing in need for consumers, both physically, but also their desire and wanting to change their day-to-day behavior. So it's a huge opportunity, and I'm excited for this webinar for that reason. I wanted to touch on at a high level how the framework of health and wellness has changed over the years. As we all know, in the past, I remember growing up looking at the USDA, sort of the pyramid, and the focus was really primarily on two things: diet and exercise. That was what I grew up with, and I came from Canada and had spent about half of my time here in the U.S. That was consistently the messaging from media and even from physicians. And what has happened, and it's sort of been a slow evolution, is we sort of gravitated to this new model of what I would characterize as, it's not just diet and exercise anymore. It's really emotional well-being, mental wellness, social wellness, and that also includes consumers wanting to do well to the environment and about sustainability. The real trigger, the real reset really happened in 2020. When the pandemic hit, it kind of, a lot of Americans started thinking about their own well-being in new ways. And what we'll find is that in the following pages, that whole new model, is the new way that Americans and even food and beverage businesses are looking at health and wellness today. There's a great study by Hartman Group. I'll mention it very quickly. So what they found in their latest study, which was published earlier this year, is that 93% of those surveyed categorized mental and emotional well-being as being a key factor of health and wellness. 91%, not surprisingly, physical. But what's also up and coming is a social, sustainable factor of health and wellness. 52% reported that as being a key factor when they view health and wellness. As I mentioned before, 2020 was a great reset. So you can see in this chart, the question that was asked to consumers, which three of the top topics do you find the most worrying in your country? So, from 2015 to 2020, it was very consistent, right? So whether it's inflation, poverty, crime, unemployment, financial, coronavirus, not coronavirus, but those four factors were pretty consistent across the board. Then the pandemic hits, and you could see that the lines really change. Right, so where pandemic really became front and center in early 2020, now it's less of a concern. You can see that red line. But what's also really telling is that the emotional aspect of inflation is top of mind now. That is the number one concern for consumers today, and I think that's important to highlight for many food and beverage manufacturers. It's not just about the physical, and that's the old model. This is how consumers are living day to day, and mental and emotional well-being is a key aspect. The most recent data in June 2023, again, it further emphasizes the fact that inflation is the number one concern for consumers. What's also newer, I would say, is that the social aspects of inequality, crime, financial factors, unemployment, and also physical, the healthcare are big factors. These are top of mind for consumers today. Earlier this year, Mondelez and Food Institute published a report on a state of snacking. There's a secondary report on how the world snacks. And this further emphasizes how consumers are changing their view on F&B, food and beverage. And so just to kind of highlight the key takeaways from that study, going from left to right, inflation, 89% of consumers are concerned about inflation. And not only that, they're concerned that the availability of the food and beverages that they want, that's a concern for 60% of that sample group. What's also what it also highlighted is that 75% of consumers are realizing that because of inflation and maybe potential for recession, they're worried about whether they have enough to purchase the food and beverage that they want. Going into the middle two columns, they're also thinking about snacks differently as well. And so 84% of consumers feel that snacks should meet a number of different needs, and in particular, nutritional needs. So this is a sign of the times. It's not, just a nice to have. This is a demand from consumers. Health and wellness is top of mind, and not just the physical, but also the mental aspect and the emotional aspect of food. And this is a growing field of study now, but more and more consumers are making the connection that food and beverage not only can reduce their physical illnesses, but also their mental wellness as well. And so they're being much more mindful of what they put in their bodies. 68% of consumers, based on the survey, are checking nutrition labels before purchasing product. And lastly, I'll just touch upon very quickly on the sustainability front. Consumers are, this is, a key concern is sustainability, right? 69% believe that sustainable packaging helps them enjoy snacks more. So this is an aspect that I don't think is going to, go away. I think it's probably going to intensify based on some of the major forces that are impacting the food and beverage industry today. We also discovered through our studies that we compared 27 countries and how consumers are snacking from 2013 to 2021. And we noticed a couple of things, and this is not surprising to the folks that are listening today and watching today's webinar. The amount of people around the world that are snacking has gone up from 78% to 86%. That's a huge growth over an 8-year period. And not only that, the number of snacks per capita, per consumer, has also increased on average from 3.1 to 3.3, representing a 77% increase. So what's driving that? A lot of it was pandemic driven. So you'll see in the middle column there that the major growth driver in snacking has really occurred in that morning, that breakfast and afternoon day part. 42% increase in growth of snacking in that morning day part, 22% increase in that middle. What we also found was that consumers are not only snacking more, but they're eating meals less. So, in the study, the percentage of people that they said that they skipped meals went up from 30% to 40%, which is a huge number. And lastly, what I'll point out is that the average number of snacks consumed by generational cohort, the cohort that represents the highest number of snacking really is that Gen Z and millennial category. And that's not surprising. But my main takeaway for many of the folks here is that the snacking culture will continue. And that's something, it's an opportunity for F&B companies to really see that as a growth area for your businesses. Another aspect that's related to what I was just saying is that, in the past, the motivations of snacking were primarily sustain, maybe energy, maybe it was a little bit of indulgence at the end of the day. Now consumers are thinking about snacks in more ways. So whether it's for nourishment, whether it's for energy, whether it's for a reset and a pick-me-up, whether it's for social reasons, and towards the end of the day, whether it's as an everyday treat or mindful indulgence, consumers are snacking not at specific points in the day, but they're snacking throughout the day, right? So again, we see that huge growth in that morning and afternoon day part. This hybrid lifestyle of work, workers working from home, maybe it's partly in the office, that has dramatically changed the way consumers eat. And again, I think this is an opportunity for many of the food and beverage companies to really address those day parts, but in particular, look at health and wellness as a way to drive transaction, to drive velocity in your products. And James is going to be talking about that in the upcoming slides. I want to highlight one thing here, just on the emotional side of snacking. You not only are Gen Zers and that younger generation snacking more, but they're also experiencing a higher level of anxiety compared to the general population. 86% of Gen Zers that were part of the survey, said that they snack to relieve anxiety. And not only that, there's that emotional, social, boredom was actually considered one of the major reasons why they snack, compared to, from 79% versus 69% of the general population. So this is a newer sort of phenomenon that's happening in the food and beverage world on how consumers are snacking. But again, I think this is also another great opportunity for companies to really think about and be targeted to addressing certain need states. And that's why I'm so excited to partner with Glanbia, because they really provide that ways to address those need states across different classes of consumer. So what is the future of health and wellness? A lot can be found out based on what consumers have reported, what they want to see in their food. So you look at, for example, functional benefits. So going back to certain products that help the body, right? Consumers are saying that they want to eat food, they want to eat snacks that address certain functional needs that they want. So you'll see a 7% increase versus 2 years ago on functional benefits. You also find that they want energy, right? So 66% snack to fuel the day. And this is something that James is also going to be addressing in his upcoming slides of how Glanbia uses protein and other items to help F&B companies really target that satiety. They want bold flavors, they want convenience, and they want snacking that or products that fit their lifestyle, this hybrid lifestyle. Four of the claims, the nutritional claims that are experiencing high growth: energy, not surprisingly, probiotics, immunity, vegan. This continues to be a high growth area across food and beverage, across snacks in the F&B industry. And this is, again, great growth opportunities for F&B companies to really target certain need states for consumers. But this is not to say that health and wellness is the sole focus here, right? Taste and flavor are king. That's no surprise. But what it does mean is that consumers are demanding something else in addition to taste and flavor. They want something where they don't need to buy 2 or 3 different products to address 2 or 3 different need states. They'd rather choose one that satisfy multiple health and wellness conditions, right? So whether it's vitamins and minerals, right? That's a 5% increase just versus 2 years ago. Whether it's a need for antioxidants, micronutrients, whether it's protein, right? That's a key area that consumers want today, and probiotics as well, which is somewhat been a theme that we've seen not just this year, but for over the past 5 years. I just want to highlight a few items what items are trending in the market today. So this is a study by Circana. So they have a new product pacesetters report, as well as the rising stars. And one of my key takeaways from this is that consumers want energy. So they want health and wellness alternative beverages like Alani Nu, right? And they want low sugar. They want plant-based. You see this Tattooed Chef being the number 7 item here. You're seeing consumers wanting products that are a little bit better for you. So instead of being really bad, like just purely alcohol, you'll see low-cal seltzers like Topo Chico. And one of the ones I want to highlight here is Kevin's Natural. So they recently got acquired by Mars. So the need for protein, the need for better for you, we're seeing this becoming more and more of a growth factor. And there's reasons why Mars paid $800 million to buy that specific brand. And the last thing I'll highlight is Olipop, right? Soda is a major cause of diabetes for Americans. Olipop represents a specific product of category where it low sugar, but also adding functional benefits to that soda category. In my view, it's a truly disruptive product that will continue to gain steam over the next 3 to 5 years. So really exciting to see new products come to market here. And last thing I want to just very much highlight, Kraft is one of the leading CPG companies in the world. They've shifted their entire strategy of looking at their product portfolio just on basic categories like mustard, like relish, like gravy, for example. What they've done over the past couple of years is really identify and target specific meal occasions and specific consumer need states. So if you look on the right-hand side, health is a key consumer need state that they're addressing. They're addressing fresh. They're addressing convenience, fun, social aspects. The family aspect. And we're not. This is not just specific to Kraft Heinz. This is also specific to many other large multinational CPG companies. So, it's a huge opportunity. The train has already left the station. Health and wellness is not only here to stay, but it's accelerating. And the consumer, because the consumer is changing, it opens up opportunities for F&B companies to really address those specific need states.